Hey there, welcome to this episode of the Print Design Podcast. Happy to have you. If this is your first time here, welcome. Here at Print Design Academy, both on YouTube and at printdesignacademy.com, we are teaching designers to be experts in print. Coming up on June 22nd is the launch of the Craft Beer Label Design course, version 2.0. Version 2.0. And I'm excited because we expand what we already taught in version, in the first launch of that course. We add in, teaching about Adobe Dimension, branding a brewery is now built into the course, as well as all of the label knowledge, right from pixel to print, and even stuff that you need to talk to your customer about before you get started with their label design. Now, the Craft Beer Label Design course, yes, it's called that, and yes, we use craft beer labels as sort of the teaching point and the references and things like that, but this course is for all label design, not just craft beer. Any beverage, coffee bag labels, pharmaceutical labels, cosmetic labels, food labels, anything, stuff going on in salsa jars, those kind of labels as well. We teach all of that. But of course, if you can't wait until June 22nd and you really want to start learning label design, head over to printdesignacademy.com. The link is in the description below as well. And there you get a free guide to 10 craft beer label designs and how they were made, materials, inks involved, that kind of stuff. So get your label design learning started over there, but keep an eye out for June 22nd because that is the launch of the Craft Beer Label Design course, version 2.0. Now, today's guest. Today's guest on the podcast is Mr. Matt Kump.
Oh yeah, how come that one doesn't have?
He is a graphic designer out of Vancouver, British Columbia, a very talented one at that, and he works closely with a brewery called Boombox Brewing out of Vancouver as well. And they create some incredible label designs all around pulling like nostalgia and that sort of vintage nostalgia, I guess I could say. In this episode, we go over 5 different label designs from how they were made, from materials, print processes, some of them with raised coatings, some of them with spot gloss stuff, some incredible work with metallic stocks and creating different foils, as well as a label that feels like a basketball when you pick it up. No joke there. Feels like a basketball. So I'm going to stop talking about that. Let's get into the interview and start having a look at these incredible designs. So I'll kick it over to Matt now. Here we go.
Welcome to the Print Design Podcast, the show where we talk about all things print and packaging. We go behind the scenes with designers and talk about the print projects they designed that really rock their world. From file prep to holding the finished product in their hand and all the key decisions in between. So, let's talk ink on paper.
Matt, welcome to the Print Design Podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. This is going to be great. This is a sort of like craft beer label edition, and you've been kind enough to share some of the work that you've done for Boombox Brewing, and wow, I want to learn more.
Well, appreciate the wow.
Awesome. Well, before we really get into talking beer labels, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
For sure. So I have been a designer professionally for my entire career. Started just making logos for video game stuff when I was a kid and just got hooked.
Nice.
So it was very natural. Went to school for graphic design at the Art Institute here in Vancouver, and then just kind of went all over the place. Web design, game design, UI design. Ended up mostly in product design, software product design. But on the side, still like to do graphic stuff for my friends. And that's kind of how I landed into doing craft beer can label design, particularly with Boombox, but also some other smaller things.
So were you putting like beer label design work out there that these people wanted to, or and then that's what people saw and started bringing more of that work your way? Or did this just kind of happen?
It kind of just happened. So it's kind of I don't really know how to phrase it, but
it's a serendipitous transition.
Serendipitous. That was literally the word I was trying to think of.
Was it really?
Yeah. It was so I'm part of a kind of a local beer community. Mm-hmm. We have a Slack room that we all just kind of talk about beer in, and it's been around for years. And essentially, a group of us started a festival called Farmhouse Fest, awesome. Which is a beer festival that, with the pandemic, hasn't happened in a minute, but it's all about farmhouse ales. It's all outside. It's a good time, and I help with the design for that. And eventually, when some members of the group, some friends of mine, were starting Boombox Brewing as a stint in Callister, which is the brewing co-op for many years, still technically. Okay. They saw my work. They're like, "Hey, we're doing this thing. Love if you could help us with like a logo." This was all it was back in the day, because everything at Callister was on draft. All you really need is a logo. Growlers are done. So I'm like,
put a logo together and that's it. That's the brand.
That's it. Now. That's early craft beer. And I'm like, these are friends of mine. I'd had Kent, who's the brewer, the main brewer there. I'd had his home brew many times. I'm like, if you're making a brewery, I want in, because that's going to be good beer. You can pay me in beer back then.
And that's awesome. And I love how you mentioned that, because isn't that really where this whole, I'm going to use all of the cliche terms here, the craft beer movement, like that's where that all started, is with those home brewers that were just putting kick-ass things together, started going like big time, and then it really caught on. Exactly.
I mean, we can go all the way back to the 1970s in San Francisco and talk about that homebrew into craft beer trend, but it is a big deal. You get a lot of people who are just kind of interested, and they have their ways to kind of dip their toes in the waters professionally. Mm-hmm. And you have people that are like much more invested and then go work at breweries and come out of that and start their own thing. And that's been very prevalent here. But yeah, things like Callister, the co-op there, that's where Superflex came from too. And obviously they're a pretty big player in the scene here.
Yeah, exactly.
So having Superflex, that opportunity,
you may have heard of them.
You may have heard of them.
That's cool. So Callister was really the home base for a lot of these craft breweries that sort of leapt out of that into their own brands, into their own places.
Yeah. They just kind of kickstarted a lot of careers. Also let people just try things without too much risk, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. A little experimentation, right? Mm-hmm. So you get to do this logo for them, and that logo, is that the same logo that's on the cans, the Boombox Brewing logo?
Yep, same logo, just the kind of angled silhouette boombox with a couple hops for speakers, which, fun fact, those hops were assets I made for Farmhouse Fest. And I'm like, these will be pretty decent placeholders. And then we ended up just liking them so much that we just kept it. And you could see these hops on an old Farmhouse Fest like banner. It's like, yep, that's the Boombox hop right there.
That's awesome. That's how it all came together. So how did you then transition this from here's your logo for just the draft stuff to now we're going to start our own brewery? Like, you need to take that logo and turn it into a brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once the time came where they left Callister and then they started brewing out of Dogwood, it was not really feasible to be a draft first brewery. Mm-hmm. The tap room at Dogwood didn't really support that versus Callister. So they're like, we're going to be doing packaging. I knew the guys pretty well. I knew what kind of vibe they were going to go for. Very like retro, a little bit of like bold. Their beers are all bold. Mm-hmm. So we knew we wanted to do fun, bold, in your face, but not like aggressive designs. We wanted to have fun with it. And they like my style. So they just trusted me fully with what we're going to do. And cool. It's a very like symbiotic relationship in terms of passing ideas back and forth. Like they'll say, hey, we want to make this beer with this kind of label. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I'll figure out how to make it work. Or I'll be like, here's an idea for a name and a label. If you have a beer that fits it, let's run it. So it's very, very casual.
That's cool.
But, yeah. So when they started Dogwood, they needed to start doing cans. The first one we did was Rad Seeker, which is a purple can with like pink text. So very synthwave, which very much in our repertoire of styles is a lot of synthwavy stuff. So we knew that would stand out. And I just wanted to make something bold and flashy that had a level of polish to it that you might not expect from a very small craft brewer.
Yeah.
But didn't look like it was part of a system necessarily. If you look at Boombox's cans, our structure is very simple. It's art. The name of the beer is as part of the art, and then the style underneath that, and then the logo underneath that. That's the entire system. There's no anchoring facets. It's like every label's like a one-off, even if we produce it all the time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What was that beer called? I want to try and find that so I can pull it up on the screen here, because I definitely want to look at that, like the original, the first.
The first one was Rad Seeker. So it's RADSEEKER.
Got it.
Big purple and pink one.
Downloading this right now. We're gonna pull it up on the screen. This is how we do it here. This is just gonna roll. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the TV show. It reminds me of a TV show, like a retro TV show, like a title screen too.
Yeah, the type is almost like Miami Vice-ish.
Yeah.
So this was the first one we did, and the idea was like, let's just have an aesthetic versus like a specific image we're trying to portray. So it's got all your synthwave tropes. It's got the grid, it's got the script with the shines, and then I'm a very Photoshop first kind of designer, so it's less vector graphic-y and more photographic-y, and it's not super reflected in like the mock-ups, but all of our cans, for the most part, there's a couple exceptions, use metallic bop. So all the grid lines, the logo, the style, and then the name are all knocked out in metallic, so that they really shine in the light.
That's awesome. And is there a photo of that one? Do I have? Yeah, I think I got photos of that one too.
Yeah, there should be a photo. Yeah, I think there's at least like a 4-pack photo in that folder.
Yeah, I got it here.
Yeah, might be that looks better on the colors.
Yeah, let's pull that up instead then. All right, live. This is live. That's not really live, but we're just gonna roll right through this. No editing here, Matt.
Sick.
That's how the best ones are done. Yeah, because the photo, you're right. As soon as I saw the photo, it made a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing about using like all these metallics and holographic materials is you can only really represent what the can looks like in real life. I can try as hard as I want to like fake this stuff, and it'll get the idea across, but it won't necessarily get the visual across.
No. So here you can see the shines in the text there, especially in the script text. Really coming through is that sort of metallic base label material.
Yeah, and you can really see this is just a raw Rad Seeker photo. You can still see the light box around it, but it's so it's playing with this element, like you can see in the grid lines how the light reflects off it. So the first at Dogwood, so the first brewery where we actually had these packaged products, they had a big fridge, like just one big fridge, and on the release day, it was just full of Rad Seekers. So it's just wall of shining purple and pink, and it was like that was like, okay, this is working. I like this a lot.
That's so
walking
cool.
into the room and seeing that. So I knew like everything, like that was the feeling I wanted to try and replicate going forward.
Yeah, when it just dominates a whole wall space like that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So just talking about the file in this one for a second here. So the areas that, you can kind of see shiny, like the grid in the floor and the highlight spots on the text. What's going on there is you've reversed out the white layer. So you've got that metallic substrate sort of creating that sheen. But everywhere you don't want that, you've printed a white, which essentially kills the metallic and makes it not have that sort of foily like sheen to it. So you can really create almost like spot gloss treatments just using the opaque white and a metallic substrate.
Exactly. And this was the first time that I'd ever done this. And I was trying to go for that spot gloss. And initially, when we were talking about it, we thought we might end up using like not full sleeves, but clear labels, and using the can's natural metallic character.
Yeah, so like a shrink sleeve.
Yeah.
Got the clear shrink film.
But when like I saw how the matte printing on a BOP label looked. I'm like, that metallic looks just like the can.
Yeah.
And this will be much easier for me to work with and control the tones. And I think it might even be a bit cheaper. So we couldn't think of enough reasons to go with the clear for not non-full, like this height label.
Yeah.
Obviously there's good reasons to do shrink sleeves if you're going all the way to the top, but this style of just sticker on can is so indicative of like high quality craft IPA that we knew it was the right move.
100%.
Yeah.
No, that's such a cool, and that's the first one.
That was the first one.
Going in out of the park.
Thank you.
Coming in hot.
That was I had the art ready. I'm like, let's amp it up and see. I had an idea of the grid being metallic from the start, and then the logo just made sense because the silver looked nice. But it was like, let's just play with it. We did a test print. We were really happy with it. We made like a minor adjustment, and it was good. That's kind of how we do everything. It's like we try something, it looks pretty good. We tweak it a bit, and it's good.
And on the printing side of these printed digital, right?
Yeah, these are all digital printed.
Yeah, so when you're printing on digital, you have the luxury of doing a test print for a pretty cost-effective price. You know, when you're in that flexo or offset world where you're creating plates and things, you know, those test prints can be pretty expensive. But with digital, you can crank out test prints to get it right.
Exactly. It's definitely one of the big benefits we have. And with most of our small batch or first time making something, we'll always do digital labels. Mm-hmm. Eventually for like mainstays, even like this label nowadays is printed offset, but we had the luxury of kind of dialing that in from the start.
Yeah, you had an opportunity to really test it out digital in that smaller quantities, and that's what's so great about that digital label print world is just testing things, experimenting, trying things. You know, where the stakes of failure are pretty low.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Cool, man. So that's what you enter the market with. And then you start developing other products, or the brewery starts developing other products. And then this beer design relationship just continues to grow.
Yeah, exactly. It's just we're getting a better sense of how this works, how the process is. And it is what it is. It's very casual. It's very open and symbiotic.
I love it. So there you had sent me a huge folder of a bunch of awesome labels, and we kind of went through and picked out I think 4 of them that we can talk about and dive into, all in sort of just a brief story on how it came to be, and also just a little bit about the file side of things, like how these were set up and materials used and that kind of thing. And I think I'd love to start with the holotape if you're cool with that one.
For sure.
Holotape, very like classic cassette tape. And what was the first cassette tape you ever bought, man?
I don't think I've ever purchased a cassette tape.
Never?
Never.
Dude, the first piece of music I ever bought was a cassette tape, and it was The Presidents of the United States of America.
Oh, wow.
What album? It was one of their albums. It was the one with peaches on it. Why is that escaping me? I can't remember the name of the album. I think it was self-titled. Anyways, that Millions of Peaches. You know, that's everybody knows that song.
Oh yeah, of course.
That was I bought that on cassette tape. And then the next time I went to buy music, like CDs were just like getting good. So I bought the second Presidents of the United States of America album, but it was a CD. I remember the cassette tape days. I remember.
Yeah, I definitely like had cassettes, but they were all just stuff I stole from my parents. I never bought my own. And actually, ironically, I do own a cassette now, and it's a Boombox one.
That's awesome.
We did
you guys
collab.
Made cassettes
with a local synthwave artist named FM Attack. Yeah. And as part of the release, we did a special kind of EP of some of their best work and did custom cassettes for it, which was a lot of fun. That was interesting too. A whole different like stamp printing process I know nothing about, frankly.
That's awesome. And that's such like that nails the brand of the brewery, right? With all of that retro and throwback.
100%.
Putting out cassette tapes is just part of that. That's awesome. So cool. So yeah, up on the screen here, we've got the holotape. This is the flat label. This is what it looks like. Sort of like a finished mock-up, I guess you could say. But let's start with this one, the actual cans.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So where did this idea come from?
So this one was an idea that Ryan, one of the owners of Boombox, came to me with, not specifically the execution of it, but he's like, we want to make a beer called holotape using holographic foil. I'm like, I'm in. I'm sold. So I just started thinking up ways of how to make that look interesting. Yeah. And I knew I could get I didn't want to make something like super holographic, just like all over. I wanted to use it in a clever way, which is generally what I try and do with metallic or any special substrate. Yeah,
there's a balance, right? You're overusing. There's a balance.
If you like, you can use all metallic in a cool way and in an effective way, but I think it needs to be intentional. So when we were doing this holotape, I'm like, well, I'd like to use it on the physical tape, very, very on the nose. So it's how do we make that something interesting? And I just thought about, I did a couple different mock-ups and landed on this tape spewing out idea, and then found that it would be a nice way to fill a lot of visual noise if I kept the rest of the can kind of like muted back. So the tape is the same color as the background, the cassette, and then using this just kind of hand drawn loop-de-loops of tape spewing everywhere and cutting off the bleed. It would just kind of fill it in and look attractive from most angles if you get it in the right light. That's the trick about holographic foil.
Yes,
is these photos both do and don't do it justice. It's really hard to get the angle and get the lighting just right to make it pop and make you understand exactly what you're looking at.
100%, because a lot of times with holographic, like you could end up with something that just looks gray if you're looking at it straight on.
100%, yeah. And that's why my mock-ups, I just put a rainbow in there. I could not make it look like I could look in front of me and look at the can that's right there and not make it reflect what I'm looking at on the screen.
Yeah, I don't even know how you could go about trying to create something like that.
So better photo editor than me, maybe.
For sure. So that's a really unique take on it. So you've used a holographic substrate, and you've got the white printing on there and black, and I guess just full color printing on top with white.
Yeah, it's just a full color print with white knocked out, and then like a layer of fake shadow on top of the curves, just to give it a little more depth.
Definitely. So you're left with a lot of that holographic substrate showing right through, nothing printed on top of it, giving you that like rainbow sheen in the right light.
Yeah, exactly. And something that's different about this one versus most of our labels is because it's a holographic material, it's a glossy finish. What we found is, or what we've been told, I actually have a test coming in soon because I want to see what it's like, is a matte finish on a holographic like really kills the effect. You just don't see it.
Oh, so, murders it.
Yeah. We have another beer that we use holographic foil for called Secret Galaxies, and we that one we're okay with being quite subtle. So we're doing a test with, and it's a more of a sparkle holographic than just a big swooping one.
More than like the straight rainbow effect.
Yeah, because it goes through this kind of like dot matrix print over it to look like stars. So we want to see if the subtle works because we really like matte finishes. Yeah. Well, I really like matte finishes.
Yeah, matte it's almost become the norm with the craft beer world. Like most of them are matte finish now.
I think specifically with this like label on can, you're getting it feels more like authentic for some reason. Like the glossy feels almost cheap in a way, even though it's absolutely not. Often it's in an execution like this, it's more expensive, literally. Yeah. But it, without taking the entire space of the can, it just feels a little off. Especially when the norm now, like you said, is everything's matte. Gloss might stand out, but it might not necessarily stand out for the right reasons.
Yes, I agree. I know what you're saying there. This is another cool shot that I just pulled up here that gives it, just another view on how that holographic is showing up. Am I right in saying that in this little window on the cassette tape here under the words holotape, there's also holographic there? You've left it holographic inside?
Yeah, I wanted it to stay like anywhere there's tape, it's technically
Yeah.
holographic. And actually, I wonder if this will. I have it here. I wonder if it will show up. You can kind of see focus. Ignore me, camera. Yeah, you can kind of see it there.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
That's how it goes. I got some lucky light here. That's really rainbowy. That's nice.
Yeah, that's really good, dude. That's the magic light right there.
Yeah, I got the magic light right here. This is the one place.
That's that streaming light.
Yeah, that's the spotlights right here.
Love it. No, that's great, man. This is such a cool one. I love the retro throwback with it. I love the use of materials.
Yeah,
so in the file, you've got a white layer, you've got your CMYK layers, and that's it, eh?
That's pretty much it. It's in this one, like the main art is just a Photoshop, like photographic image. And then I have like the vector layer that knocks out the ribbon itself to do the white printing. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward label. I'm generally more comfortable with Boombox labels in like Photoshop photographic stuff versus pure vector, but we have done that as well. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, I love how you say, it's a pretty simple setup. And then, a lot of people, when they're looking at that, are trying to figure out what is going on. Like, how is this created?
Yeah, it did take me like a couple personal test prints to make it look right. That's why I ended up adding like fake shadows into the like printed over the holographic.
Yeah.
Just pure black, just to make it feel a little more real. But for the most part, so dialing that in was tricky. But for the most part, it's just a picture of a cassette on a grayish background.
Yeah, but it comes down to knowing what happens with different substrates when you do different things. Right. And then once you know that, and you know how metallic and holographic stocks react, you know how shrink sleeves in the can, you know how those effects work, you can create some astounding designs that on sort of the technical side are actually fairly simple and straightforward, but the execution is just bananas. Like, it just looks so crazy. Yeah,
exactly. And we've learned a lot, like printing these over the years. Like this one label that I don't have here, but Wizard Mode, which the idea is like it's a dot matrix display, like a pinball thing. Like Wizard Mode is a pinball thing. So it's all orange dots at different opacities against the background to represent the light. And I wanted that to be metallic. Orange does not stay orange when it's metallic.
No.
Very brown. So it came out a little more brown than I like, but that's something I learned. We're actually working on another print of it, and I'm hoping it's improved. We'll see. This is another gotta test it just to see.
Yeah, so that's when you go and you see how the colors react, and then you go, okay, that's a little bit too brown, a little too dark. You go into the CMYK and you're playing with values to get it to print the way you want it to look.
Yeah, exactly. And this time I'm actually going with a pure neon Pantone spot.
Nice.
Just to see if that amps it up a bit. There's other things we could do, but I don't want to. It would be a big change, and I don't really want to risk that just yet, because it still looks good. I'm still happy with it. Just little tweaks each time.
You're like, just a little something you could do here.
Yeah,
got it. The next one that I think I wanted to dive into is Juicy AF, and that's one of the. Is that that's a regular beer? That's not a special run. That's something that they run all the time.
Yeah, that's a core beer. It's one of the first ones we did. So we started with Rad Seeker, then we did Ultra Deluxe, and then we did Juicy. And Juicy is really popular, so now it's just become a mainstay. It's got its own box. Not many of our beers have a box.
You know what? That's how you know you made it, when you got a box.
When you got a box, that's when you're in the big leagues now. It's honestly it's a cheaper and more environmentally friendly way to package 4-packs if you can do it. Which producing beer at Parallel 49 lends us all their equipment. So being able to do our bigger batches like this instead of pack techs, it's a lot more efficient.
Yep.
Just on the whole.
100% boxes for sure. Awesome. So this one is just is this a photo or a mock-up? This looks like a photo.
This is a photo. Yeah. So you can really see how the metallic spot metallic here reacts to light really well.
Awesome. Well, talk me through the idea of this one. Talk me through the conversation of, I'm kind of thinking and where this idea came from.
So this one actually took a while to get in because we knew the name was going to be Juicy AF. Like that was it. But that's such a generic concept. Like Juicy IPA is just 99% of IPAs. Even back then, this would have been 2017 that we did this. So I ran through so many concepts. I had one that was like just Juicy AF, like the letters almost like fridge magnets, but not photorealistic, making this weird face because I was just running out of ideas. And I was getting really photographic with it. And I'm like, this isn't working. It looked like that one didn't work because I'm like, Ryan was like, it looks like a steel and oak label. I'm like, damn it does look like a steel and oak label. We can't do that. But this kind of just came about with just like sketching things. I was like doing like kind of flowing juice, and I was thinking photographically, but my renders were like just quick Photoshop, like blocky chunks. And I'm like, I kind of like the blocky chunks. And so I did this this is the one of very few labels that's 100% just all done in Illustrator, all vector, using some basic Illustrator like shadowing effects and stuff like that and gradients. So it's just the idea of pretty much orange juice. Like it's pretty much orange juice, which you can describe a lot of these beers as. It's orange juice made harder for adults.
It's the hard juice.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, I want to play with these kind of flowing waves and just let the color do the heavy lifting, and then integrate the type into that because I get all these layers for free. Because it had started as an idea of like this kind of juice like interacting with the letters, sorry. And I'm like, okay, well, I can do that in a more simplified way. And then when thinking about the metallic, I just wanted to reinforce that movement. So it was, I have these forms. I can reinforce their layering by like using the metallic shine, and then just finish it with a contrasting green to really make it look like an orange.
Yeah, it's crazy how much depth is in the label visually.
Yeah, and that's the layering, the gradients, and the lines. Like it looks a lot worse without the lines.
Does it really?
The first one we ever printed, it was supposed to have the lines.
Yeah,
but the printer just like I guess ignored the knockout layer.
Yeah,
or just something happened, and they just printed like full metallic, so you couldn't see the lines. It was just metallic. The whole
thing. Yeah,
this is boring. This sucks. So
oh no.
We have like, and it was like we didn't sell it. We were like, you messed up. We need the right one. But it was interesting to see that because like that was what I was looking at in Illustrator. 'Cause my layers, like I don't see the metallic layer there. I didn't draw these lines in the label art. It's only knocking out the art. So it's the very bottom layer. So seeing it fully realized like this is beyond anything that I was actually mocking up.
You weren't even able to like envision this when you were creating this on screen. You were just hoping it was going to do what everybody was hoping it would do.
Yeah, exactly. Like I had an idea and I had like my rendering of maybe this will do this.
Yeah.
But until you see it in person, it doesn't really do it justice. And luckily I was happy with how it came out. So it worked.
That's awesome. So again, this is metallic substrate. We've got a white layer that's allowing metallic to show through in certain areas. And then you've got your CMYK printed over top of everything. And in the areas that you've reversed out that white layer, it's basically changing the color of the print.
Yeah.
Because it's printing on metallic instead of white now.
Yeah, exactly. So this was the first one where it wasn't like taking a piece of the art that was like, this piece is going to be metallic and like just knocking it out. It was like, no, we're just going to imply that image with the metallic. So if you rotate it at the right angle, like the lines will disappear into the art because they'll match. Yeah. If you hit the right light. And we've used this again in the future. So like Radseeker doesn't do this. Like the lines for the grid are on the art. Like you could see, if it wasn't metallic, you could see it. But Synthwave, which is like a sister beer to Radseeker.
Okay.
It has these grid mountains. they're purely the same technique as this. They're just, if you look at the art, there's no mountains there. And if you angle it right, you won't see the mountain at certain parts. So it's a fun way to kind of illustrate without drawing.
That is so cool. Such a unique way to use that. So yeah, like in your, now I can picture this, that in your Illustrator file, it's blah. And when you look at the white layer, that vector reversed out white layer, you can see all the stripes and the lines and things that you're trying to achieve and bring out in the design. But when you put them together, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. That's always the fun part, is like seeing the final result and it surprising you still.
Yeah. So talk to me about that for a minute. When you go from, working for weeks or months on a specific label design and you're seeing it on screen and, never anything in print, what's it like to finally hold it and see it, in real life on a can?
It's really cool. I still remember the first one that ever had was the first one. So Rad Seeker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I didn't get to hold it until we were selling it. Like I went to Dogwood, and the first one, I just had it in my hand and like, all right, we got something here. We got something going here.
Cool.
It was a really, really cool feeling. And I get that every time still. It's like, especially when we're doing new things like holotape, seeing that for the first time.
Yeah.
Or some of the like raised ink stuff we do, or some of the like batch printing, like Hype Beast. We have like technically 7 or 8 different layouts for that one, and we just print them all and you just get them randomly. So seeing them like stacked up beside each other to actually spell out the full word, it's really exciting, because those are things that you could envision a little bit digitally, but until with any kind of print design, it doesn't feel the same until it's there in front of you.
Totally. And that's because you can't recreate textures. You can't feel your screen and be like, oh, that's how that's going to feel. That's cool.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And even when you're just print, like regular print on just paper, like you can't create that tactile experience when you're designing on screen. So when you can finally hold it and the design meets that tactile part of it and the application in the environment it's going to be in, like that's when it all comes together.
Yeah, that's the joy for me in doing print design work, having spent the vast majority of my career doing exclusively digital web product game stuff. It's not the same. It's another level. Get a different joy, a very different one. But this really satisfies the old school designer like want in me, versus like the am I meeting our KPIs desire.
Exactly. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. But creating physical objects and putting them out in the world, like that's a pretty cool feeling.
For sure.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so I want to move on to one that we were talking about earlier that takes advantage of some pretty cool technology that's available in this digital print world, with Tempest beer. So let me just pull that one up and then tell me the story about this, how this all came together. And boom. So this is it. This is awesome.
Yeah. So this one's really fun. So this is a collab that we did with Superflux. Superflux came to us with the name idea. They were opening their new space right in the middle of a pandemic, and we're doing some collabs with breweries just to like have some beer out there while they're transitioning away from Strathcona to the new space. And it's a match made in heaven, probably the 2 best IPA producers in the province. Sorry, everybody else, but it's true. Coming together to make a beer. And they came to us with the name. I didn't know why it was Tempest at the start. And my brain immediately went, oh yeah, the arcade game. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
We do arcade stuff. We have a literal beer called Arcade Glow. It's very vintage, very retro aesthetic. And then Matt from Superflux mentioned, it's like, oh, it's a Tool song. I'm like, oh, from Fear Inoculum. Okay. Very different.
Not exactly what I was thinking.
Not exactly what I was thinking. But the artwork for Fear Inoculum is like this fractal tube, like this fractal, like never like black hole essentially,
Okay.
which is very in line with the Tempest like art, the game, which is just an endless vector tunnel.
Got it.
And I'm like, okay, well, I can play with that for sure. How do I make something that feels boomboxy, but also super fluxy? Because they're very particular about their brand. They have excellent taste and like awesome ideas all the time. Genuinely. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to play with a little bit of metallic. So all the borders on all this art are metallic. So we wanted to separate the cells a little bit. And I knew I wanted to play with a color palette that wouldn't normally be boomboxy, definitely more super flexy.
Okay.
And then the boombox part of it is put the name in the middle because that's what we do. That's not what Superflex does. It's very not Superflex. So it's very to the point. And then the other thing that we like to do is play with the process of printing these things. So we use metallics, we use foils, we use raised inks. And so like you mentioned, we were using this technology from HP, name completely escapes me, but essentially we have one base label that has these spot colors in all these different places, and we can randomize how those colors are applied with each label that comes out. So there's like, I don't remember how many, but like thousands of different ones.
You can using the HP Indigo like software collage and then something else. I can't quite exactly remember what it was called, but you can basically randomize and create an infinite number of variabilities in different labels. So every label that comes out will have some kind of different variation in color, in positioning of those colors and whatever that be.
Yeah, and you could use different image assets and stuff and pull from a folder and things like this. There's all sorts of, I know Brassneck, I believe they use it for their base labels too. Like the photo pulls randomly for the back, if I remember correctly.
Cool.
So we wanted to play with that. Our printer was talking to us about this way in the past, and we've always wanted to use it. So this made perfect sense. We're like, one, it's okay that the labels don't match because it's Superflex and Boombox. It's gonna sell no matter what we do.
Yeah,
that's the luck of this one. So let's have fun with it and let's make it unique. So we pitched this. They were super into it. And then so like I have like it can be any like assortment of colors, and it feels very on brand for both breweries. So it was very simple design. Let's make a tunnel. I did this like wide hexagon to like encapsulate the entire text. And it was fun. Another reason, knowing that I don't have to worry about it being on shelves. The name is not readable, like from the front. If you're just looking at it, it's
MP.
Yeah, it's so we get to do cool shots and like have fun with it, and Instagram ready.
Yeah,
things
exactly.
Like that.
So on the file side, how did you did you have to create something different? What did you have to spec as a designer to take advantage of that sort of AI feature, that software?
Yeah, so all I did was I made essentially one base label with like colors randomly assorted by me, with a set of 5 or 6 spot colors. I can't remember exactly how many we used. So this is like defining this is our palette. And I worked with the printer. They brought it into the software and did that side of it, and then generated the print files. But it was, here's the colors we're going to use. Any asset that uses these colors is fair game for the software to randomize. In this. So it was generally a pretty straightforward file. Still has the white knockout for the metallic edges, the strokes around the cells. And then the cells were just vector layers that it would automatically detect, like it's using the spot color, so it's fair game. That was it.
I can just imagine being the guy who's running the label equipment, because 99.9% of jobs you're running, same label. But to be running a job where every single label that comes out of the printer is different, like what a trip that must be.
Yeah. Especially looking at this one where it's just like psychedelic colors, like going down a tunnel, just coming at you. And you got to be like, what did I eat today?
Maybe those weren't regular mushrooms that I had on
boy.
them. That's a cool one, and you're right. Like you were able to do anything with this. And that's some of the greatest opportunities for experimentation and just what the hell kind of trying things out.
Yeah. I'm really lucky with getting to work with Boombox specifically because they're super open to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
We treat every beer as its own thing versus like part of a overall system. So it means we get to have fun with it, and they have as much fun with it as I do.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one that I wanted to dive into with you here, Matt, is, let me just remove this out of here, was one that you guys called Baseline Dunks. And so, funny story on this one, a mutual friend of ours, Gabby, was showing me this picture on Instagram. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool design. Now, they could have taken it even further by putting a raised coating on all of the bumps of a basketball. So most of the can label looks like a basketball. And I said, oh, that would have been so cool if they did that. And then she went to the next slide where it showed a different angle. And she's like, no, they did. What? And that was just like the mind-blowing moment.
Yeah. It's a super fun label. And yeah, that was the exact idea that we wanted to do. So this beer, Baseline Dunks, was going to be a collab along with these kind of like special colorway glassware of like basketball teams that we released at the American. But the idea was this is one where they came to me with a name, but that we knew it was going to be basketball themed. Kent, the brewer, used to play basketball. Tall man, very large man. He can baseline dunk. So
that's awesome.
We kind of explored some options, and then I really like super graphic, like you get the idea, minimal kind of photographic approaches to things. We don't use it that much, but I really love doing it. So when I had this idea with the full basketball, is like we'd already done raised ink printing before on a beer called Just the Hits, which is like a record. Another kind of super graphic where the ridges of the record are raised ink. So you get that texture.
Yeah.
And so we knew what we were doing. And so when we did this one, we made a basketball, and then I meticulously made all the nubs to do the raised ink. And yeah, it's just, you can kind of see in this light, it looks and feels like a real basketball. It's amazing how accurate that idea came to be.
This idea just hit me. I think if you didn't see the whole label and you just saw like a little sort of orangey orange corner of it with the bumps, you'd almost think it's like some like beer that's about like puberty and acne on somebody's face.
Hey, I got some ideas now.
There we go. Let the ideas go. Oh man, no, but that's such a cool way, and something, again, one of those things that really just highlights how print can create these different experiences that, digital and online and Instagram, like all of those things can't. Like, yeah, exactly. What a mind-blowing experience when you've picked up 1,000 cans in your life and it's just a smooth surface, to grabbing one of these and going, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah, exactly. We got a lot of people like mentioning that as soon as they grabbed it, which you would.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is really cool. Like, that's really what we're doing. We could have not done it, and it probably would have sold and saved us money. Not had it, we wouldn't have to get a plate made to do the spot ink. But
yeah, because that's not cheap, that stuff.
No, but one of the things that we think about when we're doing spot inks like this is, or getting plates made, so this and Just the Hits, is we can do other labels with this exact layout. Change the colors, change the name, make it part of a series, and give that some added value. So if we did like Harlem Globetrotter style colors and had a different name, it could still work. It would just be, the dots. Like in this one, it's a little trickier because like the name has to like fit the same kind of general area. It's okay if the dots overlap a little bit. The stripes are all, the dots don't touch the stripes at all. So it's you actually feel the dips, which is fun.
So you really gave yourself some flexibility in creating that plate, because if you had it directly outline the word baseline dunks, like you're stuck with that name. You're not going to be able to use that plate again with a different name.
Yeah, exactly. Or we could like have something baseline dunks, or like double dry hop baseline dunks or something like that.
True.
And apply it kind of over top, which is an option. And it was the same with just the hits, because only the ridges on the very outside are raised ink versus the center, which is just where the name is. That's all flat.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up just the hits here as well, just because that one is another one that I thought was super cool. So let's get that bad boy out here. Yeah, that's so, it's so rad. Yeah, just looking at it here. Okay, we'll share this in a sec here. The magic of technology and whatever else I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, while I'm doing this, what are you drinking?
Water.
Come on.
Just a little water.
Come on.
Had some coffee and some water. I'm streaming tonight. Tonight I'll be drinking a lot of stuff, but
yeah, exactly.
I got the Pêche Mortel bourbon on deck because that just arrived in town.
Sorry,
so that'll be fun.
What?
Pêche Mortel. It's an imperial stout from Deux de Ciel in Quebec. Okay. So the normal one you can usually get around town. It's one of the best. It's got coffee in it. It's like one of the best imperial stouts that you can just get. It's always around. And then once a year they release a bourbon barrel aged version, and that just arrived recently. Should be at some stores. I think it's at like the Gull. Very, very good beer. Although it
sounds like a premium beer.
Yeah, this is definitely a premium beer. Although at the scale that Deux de Ciel produces, not really at a premium price. So it's not quite at the local imperial stout release like cost, because their batches are way bigger.
That's awesome that breweries are at that scale and getting that notoriety, almost that wine had, like, oh no, I only get from this winery or this region, or when a special bottle of wine or whiskey comes into town, oh shit, where do we get it? But beers now that way was just even like the one you're describing, like that's a big deal for somebody who knows beer.
Yeah. The beer. I mean, beers. It's gone super regional. It's varietal. It's getting more and more ingredient focused. Not that it ever wasn't, but people are being particular about. It's like, oh, what brand of malt did you use in this? It will change the flavor pretty dramatically. Yeah. So it's getting to that point. We still have like the kind of labels I'm making. This isn't wine. Like it's still very like, I want to say down to earth. There's definitely beer out there that's more like closer to wine in general branding, but obviously wine comes down to this level too. And I'm saying a low and a high, but it's more different.
I know what you're saying. I know it's less in that sort of like bourbon barrel aged, like that sort of specialty market. It's more of like a general purpose good product.
Yeah, for sure.
So up on the screen now, we've got just the hits. So right away, you can see you've got the metallic on there. You've got, and that raised UV is sort of the record lines around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this was the first time that we used raised ink. We actually did this the same month we did holotape. So that month we just decided to spend all the money, I guess. But the idea was just to do this record concept. Actually, Ryan came to me with this idea, and I loved it. And he's like, I assume that he had got told about the raised ink by the printer, which good job.
Yeah, smart.
So this was a collab we did with Twin Sales back in the day. And it was just, I'm like, I know exactly what to do. It's very straightforward. Let's just dial in the execution of it. And it feels super cool. Like this is the first one where I'm like, all right, it's not just like a little glossy. It's like, it's got like a waxy feel to it, which is perfect for this, like a vinyl record. Yeah. And then we kind of faked this gold foil. So it's a metallic stock, but I just gave it the texture to make it.
I was going to say, it's got like some texture going on in there.
Yeah. So we wanted it to feel like a just the hits, like a compilation album of the best parts. So this was a collab between Boombox and Twin Sails that was very, very, very good. They'd collaborated before on a beer called Kicking and Speakers, which is long time ago before we were doing cans. And that was considered like extremely good. And this was very similar. Like this was kind of referencing the best parts of both breweries in terms of this style. So getting to do this raised ink, and it's literally just we made a plate that's just these rings that go around, and then it's the same layout in the file itself, just for mock-up purposes, but there's no printed lines or anything. It's just or there's no printed lines in the artwork, I mean, but there's the layer on top, just raising everything underneath it.
So is there a matte laminate on this as well?
I don't know. Hold on. Do I got it here? I don't think so. No. Like you can, like even this can I have, some of the raised ink is chipping away. Like it's our normal matte labels just with the raised ink printed on top.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So, when we're looking at all of these labels, when you're interacting with textures, you're using holographics and metallics and you're creating these cool effects. From what I understand, and from the conversations I've had with designers who are in this world, like the beer industry offers almost second to none when it comes to creative freedom and just pure creativity, not necessarily looking for an ROI, but what can we do to just create something that just looks like a smash hit?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely true. The beer industry, for the most part, is kind of driven by excitement about beer. Versus, you're not getting into beer to make money.
Yeah.
Full stop. It's not a lucrative industry unless you get extremely lucky or you're like a multinational.
Yeah.
But most breweries are just like either started by brewers who want to express their beer and just have fun with it, or started by people who are excited about beer and then find people to come on board. But in all those cases, it's just like, let's have fun. And they can either be super brand sensitive and go like, we want a system, but we want it to be very distinctly ours. If you look at breweries like Daggerad, they fall in that category and their labels are incredible. And then like Superflux started with a vibe and are now kind of systemizing as well. But the opportunities are endless. You just want to make something that represents you, but is new and fun in some way.
That's cool. And it's like the more you understand about how these labels and how shrink sleeves work and how they're made and how they're applied, the more you understand about all of these processes and different materials you can use, the crazier your designs can get, the more wild, the more unique experiences that you can create. And I'm going to put this out there, Matt. I'm still dying for somebody to use like the cedar wood grain label, like a veneer wood label, not to print it and make it, but the actual wood veneer label.
It's been done.
By who? Where?
Here, Four Winds.
Four Winds, really?
Four Winds Edna. So at least the original labels. So the first, they've done it a couple times in this series, but Edna was the very first one.
Okay.
As far as I know, they're the only local brewery to do it. It was the first beer that I can recall that there was ever a lineup for the release. So this would have been 2015, I think. And so people were lined up outside of the brewery, which is in an industrial park in Delta. People were lined up,
like a pretty location.
No, just lined up down the street to get their 2 bottles of this crabapple saison. Barrel aged crabapple saison. Edna crabapple. And it's they did a wood veneer label with kind of their standard aesthetic, like ornamental name in the middle art on it. And it was just like, that was really cool because they were the first ones to do it. And I think they did it again with another in that series. I forget which one it was though. But nobody else has really pushed that here. I'd like to see it on a can. That would be interesting.
Yeah, so I just did like a mad Google search. So they've switched to like just a linen uncoated paper.
Yeah.
So they don't do the wood veneer anymore.
Yeah.
And then looking at some of like I found a couple of pictures where it's just like a little corner of it, and you could tell it was the wood grain, but their design covered a lot of it up. Like I can't find the front of it showing like that wood veneer finish. So nobody's left it alone as a wood veneer and print and gone minimal with it.
Mm. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, my recollection of the front of it. Do I still have a bottle of it? I might. If you don't mind me stepping away, I might have a bottle. One second.
Okay, I'm gonna be shocked. I'm gonna be shocked. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Batch 1, bottle 252 out of 750, bottled June 22nd, 2015.
That is amazing.
I thought it had some stains, but it's wood grain.
Yeah.
So I'll try and focus it here.
Come
so
on, camera.
See, let's try and get some angles there, but you can kind of see the wood grain shining through there. This was the first one, and you can kind of
Oh, don't rip it off on my behalf.
I'll just peel it a little corner up. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's definitely, this was a fun one to get. I doubt it tastes good now, just for the record, but this is more of a collectible.
More of a collector's item. Yeah.
I have a fresh one too. It's in the large, these are 500 ml bottles. It's now in the large format. But yeah, I would love to do something with this if I can make it fit our aesthetic.
Yeah, somehow create and make it fit. I'm just trying to think back, like, what are like the retro things? I don't know if it's the right timing, but I'm going to throw this out there as an idea. Just before we wrap this up, is, in that retro column, I did this. I started putting YouTube videos out about how print has this like lasting memory power. And I specifically talked about Pogs, because when I was in grade 4 and grade 5, dude, Pogs were it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about Pogs and looking at them, and when you look at them back as an adult in this design space, right? You're like, these are all like crazy illustrations and design. Like, can you imagine being a Pog designer back in the day?
It's funny. A friend of mine used to host a charity Pog tournament.
No way.
In the recent past, so not when Pogs were in. Pogs here. I have Pogs somewhere in this apartment.
We'll have to challenge you. We'll have to get together and do a little slammer match, a little slammer battle with some Pogs.
But there's so many. It's such a specific aesthetic, and then obviously you have like the co-branded ones.
Yeah.
That just opens up a whole opportunity. But it's like, I could definitely see like that kind of theme being pulled in.
Yeah, so if you created something like that, or a label that had this like hang tag on the neck where you could like literally punch out a Pog and just start collecting Pogs or something, right? And I even thought of this idea after I did the video, or in the video I talk about it, is if you got a bunch like 50 amazing talented designers and illustrators together, and you gave each of them that blank circle, do whatever you want, and you printed this tube of collectible artist created Pogs, like that'd be so rad. That'd be just awesome.
I can guarantee that's coming at some point. I don't know how.
Yeah, that's a Kickstarter project somewhere out there. I've said it before. I've said it live. I better get on.
I don't know how restrictive they are on the copyright, but designer discs.
We're just designer discs. Yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely see that happening.
That's cool, man. Awesome. Matt, this has been fantastic. Like diving into some of these beers, talking about your journey to this, talking about how incredibly creative the beer industry allows you to be when it comes to design and creative freedom. Like, man, such an awesome spot to be. So if there's any designers who are aspiring to create beer labels or connect with a brewery, last question is what advice would you give them? How to get started? Where to get started?
Oh, good question. I would just say, I'd probably say one, find stuff you like and just collect it and see what people are doing. And then if you know somebody who's doing homebrew, like,
hey,
help them out.
Can I design a label for you?
Polish your stuff up a bit. It's fun. You have to treat it as a hobby.
Yeah.
I think if you're lucky enough to end up having it as a career, that's great. But if you're doing it just on your own, it's not an easy industry to just kind of get into unless you're part of the community already in some capacity.
Yep.
So it's just make stuff that seems fun. If you have an idea for a label that you just wish existed, just make it. It'll be fun. It's not like trying to redesign a website as like a portfolio piece. It's just, making band posters as a kid, even though nobody asked you to. It's a fun way to play around in an interesting medium. And it's easy to find a can of beer, take the existing label off and put yours on and see how it feels. And just play around.
And what I was just thinking about too is in the craft beer label design course, we go through finding a printer and why working with a printer and building a relationship with a printer is so important. And if you find a digital label printer that, is creating a lot of work for this beer industry, fairly cost effectively, you could get 5 or 6 labels printed off as a digital proof of your design and use that for some photos, use that for testing, things like that. You can do some pretty cool things.
Yeah. The barrier to entry in that respect is pretty low nowadays. And you can just try super exciting things because in that case, you're your own boss. Yeah. So you just get to show how your brain works and take some photos of it in situ in real life. And people, if you make cool stuff like that, they will come knocking. Like they are looking for something new. There's so many breweries end up going to the same like agencies or people because who's there?
They do stuff.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. Matt, well, I want to wrap this up. Where can people find you? Because you're doing some pretty cool streaming stuff. So why don't you tell me about that quickly here?
Yeah. So I'm streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/itskumpy, Kumpy. I'm doing beer streaming, which is kind of weird. It's talking about beer, particularly local stuff, drinking beer, playing games with chat, stuff like that, letting them force me to buy stuff I don't want to drink. So that's been fun. Talk about design there too. We actually just went over the Craft Beer Marketing Awards last week, which was really insightful. There's even some local stuff in there, which is cool. So that's one place. I have the same handle on Instagram where I post a lot of stuff. So it's Kumpy. So if you want to see like my label work in progress, I might even start doing live label design on the stream if Boombox is cool with that, which I think they'll be cool with that. And then, I have Twitter as well, but it's just KUMP, just @Kump. So no Y on there. But feel free. And if you have any questions about how I do any of this stuff, always open. Just give me a shout.
That's cool, man. So what's on tonight's stream? Because you're streaming tonight, right?
Yeah, tonight, just keeping it kind of easy. Going to play some Jackbox and drink some beers. Nothing too fancy. Next week, probably do a little more specific topical stuff. But just got my jab last weekend, so keeping it casual this week.
Keeping it low key.
Honestly, didn't feel nearly as many side effects as I was worried about. So could have went harder. But
good. Yeah, could have went harder. Nice. Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for joining me on here. And I'm going to make sure I link all of these things on where to find you down in sort of like the show notes or the YouTube description area so people can find you.
Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks so much for your time, Matt.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great.